Hey, hey, hey. Do it. Prove it. Testing. Hey, 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 good morning and good afternoon, wherever you're listening from. I'm Delores Jones, your comeback coach. You're listening to Finally Free, and I'm also streaming live on the Fly Nubian Queen Network. And I hope that you are tuned in and locked in some kind of way. Also, you can listen on Power 98.5 FM in Kansas City. Also on the web at kuaw.org. And I believe we're even live on YouTube, Mr. Walker. How do we do that? KUAW Radio on YouTube. So hello, YouTube. Hello, you and you and you. Hello, Gerald.
What's up, Hot Rock?
Hey, it's all about it. It's all about it.
There you go.
Now, listen. Today, we're just going to dive into several topics as it relates to making it in a crazy, mixed up world.
Yes.
I mean, so much is going on. And, you know, as you and I were talking and sharing articles,
so much is going wrong.
So last week we had the school shooting, and I think we recently had another one.
Yes.
I mean, I just lost count. Okay. But another story that was on the news that you brought to my attention, and I thought, what is going on? And then I sent it over to you. Okay, so then we can get into the lawmakers approving mental health programs for students and all that other stuff. But it dealt with a man, I believe he's in North Carolina, and he went out to eat with his family.
So you read the article?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
The man drove his car into
He's
a
old.
restaurant.
He's old.
He was an older gentleman.
He doesn't he doesn't fit the typical profile
Right.
for a killer.
And I kind of talked about some of the profiles for a person who is likely to start shooting up people,
All right.
women, and we'll hit that as well. But so here's the story. It's on CNN.com. Man drives into his family's table at a restaurant, killing his daughter and his daughter-in-law, and wounding his family.
Yeah, he seated them.
He seated them.
He walked into the restaurant with them to seat them.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be sure he knew where
they were sitting.
where to land the car. Yes. And then went outside and yes.
So I guess he said, I'll be right back. I mean, that's normal. You know, you sit your family down and you say, I'll be right back. I'm going to the restroom or something. But
Right.
but 62-year-old.
Right.
Let me find
Old
his name.
killer.
Don't call him an old killer.
He's an old killer.
He was a sick man.
Well, apparently.
He was a sick man.
He had
His
to be.
family said that he had been dealing with
Here we go.
major depression.
Mr. Walker, here we go.
So 62-year-old Roger
my
Self, he is now charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He did this on Sunday.
Okay, now we already got to back this up.
Well, wait a minute. So he intentionally drove his car into a North Carolina restaurant where his family was eating, killing his daughter and his daughter-in-law and injuring several others. It occurred, Sunday at noon, and they were at the Surf and Turf Lounge eating, and they didn't know what hit him. No pun intended. But the man, he just came.
I'm like, huh, bro?
I know. Okay,
We gotta back this up,
okay,
though.
let's back it up.
Now, because here's the thing.
John.
Now I'm sick and tired of when people. Here's the thing. They're saying, "Oh, he was a sick man. He was struggling. He had depression." Depression does not make you seat your family, roll outside, jump in your car. He wasn't moving fast. He's 60-something years old. Jump in your car and go ram the car into the restaurant and kill your family. That's not depression.
Well, what is it?
Well, it could be a number of other things, but that's not depression. And so for all the people out there who have depression, they get offended when they hear these things like, wait a minute, I got depression. I'm not crazy.
Well, his was
Depression
severe.
isn't crazy.
His was severe, and there is a difference, right?
Yes, it can be severe. Depression does not make you kill. Okay. This is something that could be possibly attributed to a personality disorder.
Okay.
If he had antisocial personality disorder, which is the clinical term for a sociopath, he could have been experiencing some psychosis. Now, here's the thing. Depression can become severe to the point that a person experiences psychotic features. But in instances like that, the people around that person would be aware of that.
Well, his family
Like,
was.
he's
Like
62 years old.
Right. His brother said that there's nothing to forgive because Roger was dealing with a lot of stuff and he was mentally ill. And his brother said, quote, the demons deep inside got the best of him and brought out the worst.
Right. But they need to give a more accurate depiction of mental illness aside from just depression. In fact, we've talked about depression, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I reviewed the symptoms of depression. Depression, a depressed person, they don't even have the energy to be going to restaurants, seating people, jumping in the car and running into them.
So
a lack of energy, a lack of motivation.
So you think
like there had to be something else
he
going
checked
on.
out of reality?
No, he might have been fully tuned in reality.
Well,
for all we know.
Now, this is what he said when his brother Monty visited him in prison. He said, quote, his brother said he was numb. He was numb. He kept saying, this was crazy. That's what he kept saying.
He said he was numb and crazy?
No, his brother said that's what he said. He said, his brother said he was numb.
That doesn't explain. Okay. Yes. And you know that when a person is battling depression, they can experience a numbness. That doesn't make them go drive a car into a restaurant to kill their family.
Okay. What makes you, maybe he was misdiagnosed, and maybe that's part of the problem.
Or he may have been accurately diagnosed with depression, but chances are he has something else going on.
He's good. Yeah, fix that. You can do it. Well,
it had to be something else
like,
besides just the depression. Well, like I said, he could have had antisocial personality disorder. He could have had perhaps bipolar disorder. And the explosive anger that accompanies bipolar disorder.
Okay.
That's a possibility.
But then there is something called bipolar depression. And how is that different than just regular depression?
Bipolar disorder, that's not exactly how we describe it clinically. That's a layman's description. Mm-hmm. Bipolar disorder is depressive episodes and manic episodes. The depression in bipolar disorder is no different than the depression in major depressive disorder. It's still depression. It is just preceded or followed up with manic episodes. Whereas a person who is just depressed, they don't have manic episodes. They're just depressed.
Well, this man snapped.
He snapped. Yes.
Okay. And then we had the killings last week. I think it was 10 to 11 people dead in Texas, Houston, part of Houston.
Yes.
Where the young man, 17 years old, his name was Demetrius, goes in with that trench coat. He has a big old gun up underneath it. And as I look back to research that particular story, I learned that he wore that trench coat every day, even with 90-degree weather.
Yes.
And so they didn't bother to say anything.
Well, there was something a little unpredictable about his situation. Not that I'm saying that no one should have been able to assess that he assessed for a level of dangerousness, but he didn't totally fit the stereotype that most school shooters tend to fit. For example, he did not randomly shoot and kill like the school shooters typically do. he spared the lives of the people that he liked.
Yeah, he did.
And so that's one thing. Two, there were actually people that he liked, which is also not typical. He was involved in extracurricular activities at the school, sports, and different things like that. And so I'm not excusing anyone for missing the level of dangerousness and volatility of this young man. I'm sure that perhaps someone saw some red flags, but I can understand how it may have been harder for them to see this coming, because aside from wearing the trench coat, he seemed to be involved in student life. He apparently had friends.
But he also had got rejected. And let's talk about rejection a little bit, because that's crazy. He was asking a young woman constantly to go out with him. And she said no.
Yes.
And then one day, they said she humiliated him in front of the class. And this was her mother talking.
Okay.
And so when he went in, he definitely knew he was going to kill her.
And that part is kind of typical. The anger and the resentment, rejection. It's just that usually these young people who commit this particular heinous crime feel more globally rejected by all of their peers. They feel alone. They are isolated, struggling to connect with their peers, struggling to even understand other teenagers, which is not uncommon. I frequently see teenagers in therapy who are struggling with social deficits because they don't understand their own peer group. And so they do things that alienate them from their peers. And so it's literally, the sessions boil down to us going over their interactions with their peers and me pointing out, hey, let's talk about how those kids might have interpreted what you did or what you said. Or, hey, young people don't like that.
Listen,
they don't like what that piece.
But his own father told a journal that his son, now this is what his daddy said, that he believed his son went on that rampage and started killing folk because, quote, he was mistreated at school, and, quote, I believe that's what was behind the shooting.
Yes, which his father is basically saying that it was bullying gone horribly bad.
Bullying gone wrong.
Yes, which is oftentimes the case when it comes to these young people who commit these school shootings. They have experienced some rejection, humiliation, different things like that. The problem is with this young man, it doesn't seem like that was standard for him. It seems like he began to experience some isolated incidents.
Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Walker. And he had poor coping skills, obviously.
Okay, now let's bring this full circle, because in the United States, according to a recent article, we have had at least 288 school shootings since 2009. And that means that we are I think we've had 53 times more than when they look at a whole nation of school shootings.
Yes.
Okay, so.
And that's since what year?
2009.
Okay, because the school shootings go all the way back to the 1920s.
Right, but they're looking at it from 2009 in less than 10 years.
Okay.
We've had 288.
It is.
So what they're saying now is that it's becoming the new norm, which is very scary, which presents this really crazy, messed up world.
Right. And so, I feel like the adults who are working with these young people are going to need to really sit back and develop better protocols and interventions as preventative measures for these situations.
Okay, well, I started
making contact with at-risk youth, The problem is if they struggle to assess who's at risk for committing these types of acts, they just need to be more connected to the student population in general.
Okay. So everybody's watching and listening to Finally Free with me, Delores Jones, your comeback coach. And I'm talking about making it in a crazy mixed up world. And my guest is Gerald Payne. He's a psychotherapist here in Kansas City. And, you know, I'm trying to find the words for so much trauma. Now, I also report for Your Black World News. And when I'm covering some of the stories, it just makes me go, what? So I'm going to bring up a couple of the headlines. We're going to try to process it, because what people have to understand is after the victims have been either shot and killed, you still have the survivors that are left and their families. And how do we begin to make it in the midst of such trauma? So I reported a story last week of a former Playboy centerfold. She was Miss November. And she was going through a child custody battle with her husband, 7-year-old son. And all she wanted to do was to take the boy out of town for vacation with her. But I think she was going to Greece to visit her boyfriend. And the father said no. So apparently she had been going back and forth, and she was really tired of this. So what she did is she was in Manhattan. She checked in to the Gotham hotel. She went up to one of the suites and decided she was going to jump out the window with her 7-year-old son. And she fell 23 feet and she killed both of them.
Because
the pressure. Now, this is the part that
the pressure from not being able to take the trip.
Yeah, she was tired. She was like, I want my son. I'm tired of this man. And he was a business owner, so he had far more money than she did. So he had an attorney, and she was working on getting an attorney. But what was puzzling to me is she had written 25 self-help books. 25.
And never read one of them.
No, she probably did. But how do you write 25 self-help books and then jump out the window and commit suicide? Okay, that's one. That's just one. And then yesterday I find this man he makes sure that he knows where his family is seated inside of this restaurant. And he tells them, I'll be back. And then he goes out and they look up, and the man, their own father, the woman's husband, the daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law was scheduled to get married in September. So his son was sitting there, and all of a sudden you see this car just plow into your family, and you look up and it's your dad.
Right.
Now, if that's not some kind of crazy, I don't know what is.
Yes, they're insane. Let's take the woman who, was upset and distraught about not being able to go on the trip. The problem with when these stories are reported is there is so much that is left out. There's so many pieces of the puzzle because what is presented does not make sense. It does not make sense. Yes, there is a such thing as poor coping skills, but this is more than just poor coping skills. I'm frustrated that I cannot go on this trip, so I'm going to commit murder-suicide with my child. I'm going to
I think it was
kill
a
myself and my
of
child.
Things. I snapped one time in the court and threw some platform shoes.
We're talking about murder-suicide.
No, but I'm saying I get the intensity.
You just had a little fit.
No, and had I not had a release of some sort, had God not pulled me back and said, look here, girl, look, Jones, you're going to have to do something different. And my shifting was I had to focus on the quality of time I had with my son versus the quantity because I couldn't control it. And I think sometimes when we're dealing with these situations, if we're not careful, we focus more on what we can't control and then we snap out and maybe we are depressed and that just intensifies the situation.
Okay. I think that if they dig deeper into these stories, they are going to find a lot more.
Okay.
Because here's the thing. Yes, some people can, as you put it, snap or, have a psychotic break or whatever the case may be.
Just talk.
But usually there is some history of, struggles in social interactions, struggles in an ability to cope, struggles in an ability to effectively and appropriately problem solve. There's more, but because the media does not present more or does not have access to more, you end up with these tiny fragments of information that are supposed to explain some huge heinous crime. There have been times where I myself have heard news stories where I personally knew the whole story and was shocked at what the media presented.
Well, you just said we, and I'm going to say we because part of the media, but I'm not on that side of doing hard news because I like to dissect it. And maybe I'm going to say in their defense, if you were given 5 minutes to tell a story and you're on a deadline, then you're trying to grab as much as you can. Now, I'm not saying that is leaving out information is intentional, but when we're talking about deadlines, then that's just one of those, what do you call it, unintentional consequences.
Well, but it's more than just omitting information, omitting pieces of the puzzle. Sometimes what is presented is just inaccurate. It's not the kind of inaccuracies where it's like, okay, they are presenting inaccurate information to juice up this story. It's not things that make the story juicier. It's just sometimes it's just inaccurate. I've sat there and been like, that is not what happened.
And so how is that different? Meaning the crime has already been committed. How is it if we as journalists would have access to medical files, which we don't because of confidentiality? You have some doctors who say, I'm not going to talk to the media unless I'm required by a judge. So then what is a person in a situation, a media reporter, to do when somebody goes in and shoots 10 people?
Well, professionals cannot talk to the media, but when family members are talking to the media, they can be more accurate.
But if the family members are in a panic mode, they're just distraught. But I did read an article. I will say this. I read an article that did place some of the blame on media. But what does media have to do with the lady that jumped out the window 23 floors with her 7-year-old son?
Yeah, the blame for these heinous crimes should not fall upon the media. It falls upon the person. The person, that's where responsibility should lie. The media just needs to do a better job of covering the story so that society has a better understanding of how this came to be. Otherwise, society is left believing that a perfectly normal person can just randomly snap and start killing their loved ones. And that's not the case.
So what do you think we should know about the grandfather, husband, 67-year-old Roger Self, who drove a car or SUV into the restaurant, killing his daughter and his daughter-in-law?
Well, they need to talk about whether or not he was experiencing perhaps some type of dementia, or they need to talk about whether or not he was experiencing some type of delusions, whether it's delusions of paranoia, which will make a person snap and do like ridiculous things, but if he had a delusional disorder, which is under the umbrella of psychosis, or, the family has to know he was sick. He's 62 years old. 67. They had to know. 67. They had to know that there was more than just depression. That's what I'm saying.
But that's what, okay. And how are they to know that? Do they need to take a mental health class, get certified as a mental health advocate?
Okay, here's the thing. Mental health classes help people to learn the official terminology. But living with someone who's insane, you end up an expert on their insanity.
So do you think they should have gone to, if you see that a loved one is struggling like that,
get him some help?
Well, he was getting help, Gerald.
From where?
He was seeing a doctor.
What kind of doctor?
A psychiatrist.
Okay, he needed more help than that, because here's the thing.
What's more help than a psychiatrist? Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, because psychiatrists give you medication.
People think because it's portrayed on television that psychiatrists are sitting up in their offices and doing therapy, and that is not the case. Most psychiatrists, the vast majority of psychiatrists, in fact, I can't even think of a psychiatrist who strays from this. Most psychiatrists just do med appointments. You come in, they do an assessment the first session, and then every subsequent session after that is 15, 20, on a great day, maybe 30 minutes, but they're medical professionals. They are just assessing for the medication, and they tell their clients, you need to go to therapy if you want to actually process through these issues.
Okay.
Because they can see 4 people in an hour, as opposed to a therapist who we're going to see one person in an hour.
Yeah.
And so psychiatry alone is not sufficient. A person, yes, they may need medication, but medication just treats the symptoms of the depression. Therapy gets down to the underlying issues and factors. So if there was a problem in the family dynamics, for example, some issues between him and his daughter and his daughter-in-law, or the family in general, or whatever the case may be, that would be something to take a look at. Now, does some responsibility fall upon the psychiatrist as a mental health clinician? Yes. I mean, they're supposed to assess for a level of dangerousness, just as any therapist does. And if a person is a threat, a danger to themselves or others, they are supposed to have that person hospitalized. But the truth of the matter is, because psychiatry appointments are anywhere from once a month to once every 2 or 3 months.
True, because they're just checking your medication. And
right, they're just doing a med check.
Yeah,
and so he may have been presenting as perfectly fine the last time that he saw the psychiatrist.
You're listening to Finally Free with me, Delores Jones, your comeback coach, streaming live here on the Fly Me Being Queen. Hello, Queens. Good morning.
What's up, Queen? Yes, Queen.
As well as we're live on the radio at KUAW.org, and they have YouTube, y'all, and that's KUAW Radio. Just KUAW Radio on YouTube. Go on, Mr. Walker. Be working it out. Doing big things. I'm going to do it. Don't come to me right now.
Right.
All right. So now we got that, but I want to hit another news story.
Okay.
Fabulous.
What?
Do you know Fabulous?
No.
Okay.
The rap?
Yes.
Okay.
And Emily B. That's his boo.
Okay.
And that's the mother of his children.
I'm not familiar with
B.
Emily B.
But listen. I'm gonna
Is she famous?
She was on.
Emily B.
She is Love and Hip Hop. She's famous.
She's famous.
Now,
okay.
Now but she got some problems.
I thought you brought up somebody that worked at the Quick Trip.
Why are you doing that?
I never heard of Emily B. But go ahead with the story. What happened?
Let me school you, Gerald.
Don't act like she's so famous. I should know Emily B.
Okay.
Like she's Janet.
Do you know
Jesus?
Do you know Jesus? Better yet, does Jesus know you, Gerald? Are you gonna make it through the pearly gates? Okay. Are you that famous and forgiven?
Yes.
So Emily B is with Fabulous. Fabulous punched her 7 times in the face. Boom, 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 boom.
When did this happen?
It happened a month ago. This is a little bit longer. I know it's awful. And then she had to have some dental work, right? And then he threatened her. He told her he would take a baseball bat and beat her with it and kill her. And then he assaulted her father. And so now he's going to court because they are finding him guilty of assault and a terrorist threat.
Okay.
But here's the problem. Maybe it's not a problem. On Mother's Day, she was in a picture on Instagram with him and their son. And he was saying how beautiful.
Of course. Yes.
Now, because
DV cycle. You got the DV cycle
But
working.
this is what I thought, because as I went back to look at the mass shooting, and then I looked at him punching her 7 times, and there's something to that.
And threatening to kill her.
Threatening to kill her with a baseball bat. He was very specific, and he don't care about her family because he beat up her father. Okay. Well, when I was searching for an explanation or a motive behind people who just like snap and kill their wives or go shoot, they found that it's not politics per se, it's not video games or even music. There are three underlining things that you can look at their behavior as a predictor, right?
Okay.
Okay. One is assault.
A history of
assault,
right.
A history of abuse,
Right.
and a history of threats.
Okay. Well, yeah, all that makes sense. But what? Let's take a look at what may have been an underlying factor causing it. For example, did the person struggle with intermittent explosive disorder, which is a diagnosis where it's how it sounds.
Well, how do you go up
They
to somebody you're
intermittently
dating and say
explode.
that? What? Hey, fabulous! I think you're fine, man. Hey, I like what you do. I like how you rap. Do you have what's the question? Intermittent
Explosive disorder.
Intermittent.
No, people with it, they typically do not. They don't know what it's called.
Then how are we supposed
What
to
they
know?
say is I snap sometimes. Here's the question.
What's the
It's
question?
unfortunate that she appeared to put herself back in that situation. That part is unfortunate. In looking at him and factors that may have played a part in him becoming that person that day, you got to look at whether or not there were some red flags that she perhaps ignored. Because a person, when it comes to DV perpetrators, we've talked about domestic violence before. When it comes to domestic violence perpetrators, they don't start like that. A person's first time abusing a woman is not going to be punching her in the face 7 times and threatening to kill her with a baseball bat. Some other things, some other signs, some red flags had to have been taking place prior to that and leading up to that. That controlling factor, because it starts with the psychological, that controlling factor and being demanding and being inflexible, things having to go that person's way. And then you get into the emotional aspects, such as the insecurities. And then as it gets deeper into the emotional and the emotionally abusive, you have the verbal abuse, and then you have the threats, and then you have the positioning, which is where he hasn't ever hit her yet, but his physical presence begins to send that message that, hey, I will snatch you up. What?
What's that?
Who? That's coming from your phone, man.
Oh, is that my phone?
If you don't turn that off,
I was pulling up some notes.
It's the Walker.
I was pulling up some notes, man.
Mr. Walker.
I was pulling up
And you
notes.
talking about, what is that? I'm like, oh, we got psychosis in this studio.
You know what?
Red gremlin for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Don't come for me, both of
What's
you.
wrong with her?
Okay. I will take my earrings off. And you don't make a black woman take her earrings off because
Please.
we know it's going to be on.
We don't want you to take them off. We just want you to pull it together.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So she missed these red flags. That's what I'm saying. And so that positioning where he might start with getting all up in her face and in her personal space, and then there may come a day where he shoves her a little bit, or he grabs her, he kind of moves her where he wants her to be. Like, these things lead up to punching in the face. There's smacks before there's punches, typically.
Smacks before punches.
Like, a person does not go from being a regular, normal person to, oh my God, I never saw any hints or signs of violence in this person until he punched me in the face 7 times.
So, like, if he just comes up like playing like that,
He's been punching faces for years. He had to have been punching faces for years. He punched her 7 times. He threatened to kill her with a baseball bat.
and he's being charged with aggravated assault.
Right. He's beating up daddies. Hey, I bet you there's a history of violence there.
Well, of course.
Okay, she should have got out as soon as she seen the first signs. As soon
I'm gonna
as
tell you about a sign I received at one point when I was dating somebody.
Okay, what was it?
And we were in the kitchen. We were having a great conversation. I was sitting down and he was at the sink, and I think we had something to eat. And out of nowhere, he looks at me and he says, "You know, if you ever hurt me, I'm gonna blank you. Like I'm gonna hurt you seriously."
And the last day you saw him?
Well, hold on. Then I looked, I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I've been hurt. And I really like you, Delores. I'm really into you. And I'm willing to give you my everything. But if you hurt me, I'm going to. And I looked like, where did that come from? Was that the devil?
That was a fool. Let me tell you, when women come to therapy and they tell me these kind of stories, my question is that the last time you saw him?
Are you
Because
asking me
it's
that?
supposed to be the last time you see a person. When a person says to you, "If you hurt me, I'm gonna whip you," ooh, dinner's over.
But listen.
What about dessert? We ain't having dessert. You get the hell up out of here.
See,
that's what you gonna
for
do.
some women, we want to hear them out.
What for?
To get.
He's waiting to punch you 7 times in the face. That's a face puncher right there. He was a face puncher.
He was gonna punch me in the face.
What happened?
What do you mean? What happened?
What'd you do?
We ain't together.
Was that one side enough, or how long did it take you to realize, okay, this might be a fool?
Well, because I put my social work hat on too.
Thankfully.
I did.
You would need to put it on. As soon as he said that, excuse me, just 1 minute.
See, part of the problem is, can I just say this? And you might have a tactic for this. Some women, once we have put our vagina in the mix,
it's harder to cut it off. Yes,
to let go.
Yes, which is the reason why abusers oftentimes they wait to allow all of those traits of themselves to present until after they feel like they have really reeled her in. And so sexual intimacy is a way of reeling a woman in,
pampering,
and yes, like they're going to present as Mr. Wonderful to reel her in and get her to fall in love, because after she's in love, because a person can only hold that kind of crazy in for a certain amount of time, right?
How can you just see the pieces of crazy? I mean, because
pieces of crazy. He gave you a piece. That was a big
that was
piece.
An announcement.
Yeah,
that was no piece.
But was that the first?
No,
little
that was forever, and it had been like several months into the relationship before that even manifested.
Okay, that is enough though of a sign.
That is, but you said a piece. I'm talking about before you get into
he
it
didn't
like that.
Slap you.
Oh no,
it was
I would,
right.
Can't say what I would do on the radio, because then it might be held against me in the court of law.
Right, but when you think about it, it's harder for people.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's harder for people to exit these potentially dangerous situations after they have fallen in love, as you have said. And so abusers tend to hold it in until they feel like it's comfortable and safe enough for them to begin to be abusive, because if she's in love, she's going to want to, I'm gonna give him another chance, and he was having a bad day and he's not usually like that, he never does these types of things. We're out of time.
Yes, and you can come back next time. Okay, finally free with me, Delores Jones, your comeback coach, and my guest is Gerald Payne. He'll be back again, y'all. I keep him in the hot seat quite frequently. Thanks for listening on Power 98.5 FM. I'll continue momentarily with the Fly Nubian Queens live, honey. All right.
Are the queens posted?
The queens are right there. Hey, queens.
Okay.